We apologize for interrupting your doom scrolling. Now, for some positive leftist news.
PLN is a member of MeansTV, a worker-owned socialist streaming platform. Stay tuned until the end of the episode for a special 20% discount offer from MeansTV, and find the discount link and code in the description box below. 500,000 people filled the streets of London in late March in a powerful show of resistance to racism and the far right, and of solidarity with Palestine. Organized by a broad coalition of trade unions, climate groups, anti-war movements, and community organizations, protesters not only challenged reactionary figures like Nigel Farage and Tommy Robinson, but also highlighted the social conditions, including the housing crisis, low wages, and declining public services, that have allowed such forces to gain traction. Rather than accepting scapegoating and fear, demonstrators called for a systemic change. A central theme of the day was internationalism, particularly solidarity with Palestine. Speakers and organizers emphasized that struggles against racism, colonialism, and oppression are interconnected. The movement insisted that the struggle against all forms of racism and bigotry, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and Israeli apartheid are one and the same. Trade unionists were central to the demonstration, grounding the politics of resistance in workplaces and everyday life. Fire Brigade's union representatives called for renewed organizing, saying trade unionists need to stand up, change the narrative in our workplaces, and make sure that we are representative of the working class. Do not allow us to be divided any longer. Let's fight back. Let's stay organized. Let's stick together. The demonstration reflected a growing movement determined to reshape the political landscape. With energy building ahead of upcoming elections, the future will be written through collective action. The New Zealand High Court has delivered a significant ruling, finding that the country's $86 billion Guardians of New Zealand superannuation fund failed to properly account for human rights considerations. The case, brought by the Palestine Solidarity Network Aotearoa, challenged the fund over its exclusion policies and their treatment of companies linked to human rights abuses in the occupied Palestinian territories. For campaigners, the ruling represents validation of sustained grassroots pressure. PSNA co-chair John Minto described the decision as a breakthrough, saying, "This is beyond outrageous. Our largest sovereign wealth fund, owned by the government on behalf of the people of New Zealand, has no specific references to human rights standards in its investment exclusions policy." The case highlighted long-running advocacy efforts targeting investments in companies listed in a United States Human Rights Council database connected to Israeli settlements, including Airbnb, Booking.com, Expedia, and Motorola. The court noted the Superfund had invested $67 million in the four companies. For PSNA and allies, the ruling marks a step forward in efforts to challenge complicity in imperialist crimes against humanity. Activists in Manhattan combined Passover observance with organizing for immigration justice, holding a sit-in at the Chelsea offices of data analytics company Palantir following a large demonstration at Union Square. The evening began with Seder in the Streets, organized by Jews for Racial and Economic Justice, where hundreds gathered in Union Square on the sixth night of Passover. Organizers drew parallels between the Exodus narrative and contemporary struggles over immigration enforcement. Rabbis led songs, activists read testimonies from people held in ICE detention centers, and banners referenced solidarity with migrants, including one reading Jews Against Deportation. After the Union Square gathering, demonstrators marched to Palantir Technologies' Chelsea offices, where they held a sit-in and entered the building's lobby. Protesters carried banners reading "ICE kidnaps Palantir profits. Let our people go." 15 people were arrested after allegedly refusing police orders to disperse and were issued summonses. Palantir has faced ongoing scrutiny over its contracts with U.S. immigration enforcement agencies, with critics noting that its technology supports deportation operations. The company has also faced scrutiny for profiting from their partnership with the Israeli military to assist in war-related missions. In response to growing concern, New York City Comptroller Mark Levine requested further transparency, calling for an independent third-party human rights risk assessment of Palantir's work with the Department of Homeland Security. Activists at the demonstration framed their actions as opposition to what they described as the outsourcing of immigration enforcement to private firms. One participant told the crowd,
"The crimes that ISIS is committing depend on their collaboration with corporations who agree to do the work for them." Pardon my voice, we were chanting a lot, but after 2 hours of successfully shutting down the Palantir lobby, we were so powerful they couldn't even arrest us all.
The community of Squadra Prosfihiga in central Athens is a long-standing example of urban resistance rooted in refugee rights and the struggle against gentrification. Originally constructed in 1933 to house refugees from Asia Minor, the Prosfihiga housing complex developed into a dense working-class neighborhood. During the Second World War and the Nazi occupation, the area became a site of armed resistance. Anti-fascist partisans reportedly used the buildings as shelter in 1944 against British and Greek state forces, and physical traces of that period, such as bullet marks on building facades and a guerrilla monument, are visual reminders of this political history. In 2010, residents organized formally into the community of Squadra Prosfihiga with an assembly structure. This marked the beginning of an organized squat, a political and social project that now spans more than a decade. The initiative describes itself as a politically unified neighborhood combining housing, communal services, and collective decision-making. The project is organized around a series of self-managed structures addressing daily needs. These include a women's cafe focused on anti-patriarchal organizing and gender education, a children's house providing education and care support, a collective bakery producing food for the community and local distribution, a social center used for assemblies and public events, a health-related support structure connected to medical solidarity networks, and a food distribution system relying on recovered market goods and weekly communal kitchens. The community also maintains shared internet infrastructure to ensure digital access across buildings. This month and last, thousands protested across Athens in support of the community amidst eviction threats from the state, which plans to repurpose the building. Aristotelis Hansis, a 46-year-old resident, began a hunger strike on February 5th to protest the planned run evictions. Protesters are demanding the evictions be cancelled, guarantees that the residents will not be displaced, and formal recognition of the renovation plans put forward by the community itself. The physical condition of the housing complex is described as severely degraded due to age and long-term neglect. Maintenance work is ongoing and collectively organized, often supported through external solidarity campaigns. Protesters chanted, "Solidarity is the weapon of society, violence against the violence of authority," and 100,000 squats against a world of organized decay. Solidarity with the community and their allies. We will put a link to their crowdfunding in the show notes. Ho Chi Minh City is moving toward a major expansion of public transport as authorities prepare to allocate around 7 trillion Vietnamese dong, or $280 million annually to make bus travel free for all passengers across the city. The proposal, announced by City Party Chief Trung Lu Quang, is expected to eliminate fares across 135 intra-city bus routes, forming what officials describe as the backbone of the urban public transport system. Under the new model, authorities plan to expand capacity significantly, increasing service frequency and upgrading infrastructure to meet expected demand growth. Officials estimate ridership could rise by about 30% compared to 2025 levels. City authorities say the move builds on earlier transport reforms, including electric bus deployment, cashless payment systems, and limited free fare initiatives, which have already contributed to rising ridership and renewed public interest in bus travel. The plan will mark one of the largest public transport fare-free expansions in the region, significantly improving urban mobility and reducing emissions in Ho Chi Minh City. Vietnam is also preparing a major expansion of its rail infrastructure with a new high-speed line linking Hanoi and Halong Bay. The 120-kilometer electrified railway is designed to run at speeds of up to 350 kilometers per hour, or 217 miles per hour, cutting the journey between Hanoi and Quang Ninh Province, home to the UNESCO World Heritage Site Halong Bay, to just 30 minutes. At present, the same trip by road takes around 3 hours. The line is scheduled to begin operations in 2028 and will connect 4 key areas: Hanoi, Bac Ninh, Haiphong, and Quang Ninh. Beyond domestic travel, the line is expected to strengthen cross-border logistics links with China's Guangxi region and reduce transport costs across regional supply chains, further integrating Vietnam into wider Asia-Europe trade networks. The rail project is also part of a shift toward high-speed, lower-emission transport systems. By encouraging rail travel over road and air transport, officials say the Hanoi-Halong Bay line will support lower emissions and reduce congestion while improving access to key destinations. Mexico's government has announced a major expansion of its public healthcare system, setting out a plan to establish universal free access to healthcare for the country's 120 million people by 2027. The policy, introduced under President Claudia Sheinbaum, aims to address long-standing inequalities in Mexico's fragmented health system, where access to treatment has often depended on employment status, location, or ability to pay. While Mexico formally maintains a broad public healthcare network, in practice many patients, especially in rural areas and low-income communities, face gaps in coverage, medication shortages, and out-of-pocket costs. Private insurance has historically filled part of this gap, reinforcing a two-tier structure based on income. The reform seeks to unify this system by coordinating existing but separate public health institutions and gradually eliminating barriers between them. The initiative is presented as part of a broader political shift away from neoliberal policy models and toward expanded social provision. Since taking office in 2024, Sheinbaum has continued and extended the policy direction of her predecessor, focusing on social welfare programs, wage growth, housing expansion, and labor reforms. Alongside healthcare reform, the government has pledged to build 1.8 million new homes to address housing shortages and strengthen tenant protections. It has also proposed reducing the standard work week from 48 to 40 hours while continuing regular increases to the minimum wage, which has risen significantly since 2018. The United Nations has adopted a landmark resolution recognizing the transatlantic slave trade as the gravest crime against humanity, providing formal global acknowledgement of one of history's most violent systems and leading to intensified calls for reparations. The resolution, introduced by Ghana, was passed on March 25th in the UN General Assembly with 123 votes in favor, 3 against Argentina, Israel, and the United States, and 52 abstentions. It formally recognizes the transatlantic trafficking and chattel enslavement of Africans as the gravest crime against humanity. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres addressed the General Assembly, describing the transatlantic slave trade as a machinery of mass exploitation and deliberate dehumanization, emphasizing that its legacy continues to shape global inequality and systemic racism today. The resolution itself elevates reparations as a central policy demand, described in the text as a concrete step toward remedying historical wrongs. It situates the slave trade not as a distant historical episode, but as a system whose effects remain embedded in global economic and social structures. The vote followed years of coordinated advocacy from the African Union and CARICOM, building on earlier continental positions that had already classified slavery, deportation, and colonialism as crimes against humanity. These efforts reflect long-standing Pan-African demands for recognition and reparative justice. Pan-African advocates describe the vote as a breakthrough in global recognition, while also stressing that it represents only the beginning of a longer struggle for material and structural change. Princess Yani of the Pan-African Progressive Front said the real work has only just begun. Several systems must change for a new structure to emerge. Workers at a major JBS beef packing plant in Greeley, Colorado have secured a new contract following a historic strike that brought together 3,800 workers in near total unity and ended one of the longest labor disputes in the U.S. meatpacking sector in decades. The dispute escalated after 8 months of stalled negotiations, culminating in a 3-week strike beginning March 16th. Workers reached 99% unity in favor of walkout action, with pressure building further as the possibility of a 4th week forced the company back to the bargaining table. A new agreement was reached on April 13th. The victory is being celebrated by union organizers as a breakthrough in a sector that has not seen a strike in over 40 years and marks the first strike ever at the JBS beef plant itself. The United Food and Commercial Workers Local 7 announced that the agreement, pending ratification, includes wage increases through April 2027, a ratification bonus, and a $500 one-time payment in 2027. Importantly for workers, the contract also requires the company to cover the cost of safety equipment previously charged to employees. The strike was led largely by a migrant workforce facing unstable immigration conditions and broader political pressure. Many workers have documented status, while others, including Haitian workers with temporary protected status, have faced uncertainty due to shifting immigration policies and enforcement threats. The industry's broader labor model has long relied on outsourcing production to rural and isolated areas, with a workforce heavily made up of immigrant labor. Against this backdrop, the strike is being viewed as a significant moment of collective worker power in an industry known for high injury rates, low wages, and extremely difficult working conditions. The outcome reflects both the leverage created by collective action and the ability of organized labor to force concessions even in historically resistant sectors. In the feel-good story of the month, The Onion has hired comedian Tim Heidecker to parody Alex Jones as part of their plan to acquire the conspiracy theorist InfoWars website. After Jones declared bankruptcy in 2022, he liquidated his assets to pay more than $1.4 billion in defamation judgments he owed to relatives of victims of the Sandy Hook school shooting. When InfoWars was put up for auction in November 2024, The Onion bid and won, but Jones and First American United Companies argued the sale process was tainted. This month, The Onion submitted a bid to a state judge in Texas to be granted an exclusive temporary license to the intellectual property of Free Speech Systems, InfoWars' parent company, which would allow The Onion to put its own content on the InfoWars website and social media accounts. The plan is to turn InfoWars into a parody of the old site and give profits to Sandy Hook families. Heidecker posted an announcement video to Blue Sky doing an impression of Jones, who tried to hit back by saying Heidecker produced pro-pedo child kidnapping, torture, and murder programs, sharing a mugshot of him from one of his famous Tim and Eric sketches. Comedy gold. Toronto just got a city-wide tenant union which will help renters fight for their rights. The prominent York South-Weston Tenants Union, which was first formed in the Western Lawrence neighborhood in Toronto about 8 years ago, is now expanding across the city. Here at PLN, we reported on 2 separate successful rent strikes the group had organized in 2023. After Ontario proposed Bill 60 in 2025, which experts criticized as being likely to create more homelessness in the city, several tenants advocated for the group to expand. With the help of Climate Justice Toronto, the group officially launched the citywide Toronto Tenant Union on April 18th. The union invites membership from all renters in the city. Members receive benefits including tenant organizing training, an income tax clinic, tenant clinic, free merchandise, and invites to community socials and events. Common issues the union can help with include the lack of maintenance fixes, rent increases above the guidelines, and the risk of eviction. Jian Chang, a communications coordinator, said the importance of binding together as a citywide tenant union is that we can have bargaining power everywhere. We can have tenant associations everywhere, and when we receive attacks from the governments who are coming at us, we have a stronger association of power to say, no, this is not what the people ask for. Progressive movements across Africa are intensifying a wave of international solidarity with Cuba, combining grassroots mobilization, political coordination, and direct engagement with Cuban institutions in response to the escalating economic siege imposed by the United States. Following a continent-wide initiative coordinated by Pan-Africanism Today, organizations in countries including Benin, Mali, Ghana, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and South Africa have delivered solidarity messages to Cuban embassies, reinforcing ties rooted in shared anti-imperialist struggle. The campaign reflects a growing continental alignment linking trade unions, youth organizations, and political movements. A joint statement reaffirmed a commitment to building the organized power of workers, peasants, women, and youth, while strengthening anti-imperialist consciousness across Africa. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, the Young Peasants League described Cuba as a guiding light for anti-colonial and anti-imperialist global struggles. Its president, Blanco Blanchard Kiongo, said our initiative is part of our solidarity with Cuba, which has played a historic role for Africa through the long-standing Africa-Cuba friendship. Cuba has been one of the key countries in our struggle, and we expressed our support for the Cuban people in the face of threats from the United States. The National Union of Metalworkers of South Africa condemned what it called a barbaric energy siege against Cuba. The union also stressed that African workers will not forget Cuba's historic role in its struggle for liberation against apartheid. These actions are taking place alongside broader political reflection within African movements. Following an International People's Assembly solidarity mission to Cuba and Venezuela, Socialist Party of Zambia leader Fred Mbembe emphasized the depth of Cuba's historical commitment to global struggles. He stated, "There are, in my view, no better people on this planet than the Cuban people," highlighting what he described as their enduring resilience and internationalism under pressure. Drawing on the historical relationship between Cuba and Africa, Mbembe underscored the material character of that solidarity. Cuban blood has been shed on African soil. Their solidarity was never rhetorical, it was practical. He argued that this legacy creates a responsibility for African movements today to respond in kind, particularly as Cuba faces severe shortages in healthcare, energy, and food systems due to the tightening blockade. These developments reflect a revitalization of Pan-African internationalism, rooted in a collective commitment to resisting imperialism while building a more just and sovereign global order. At a packed hearing in New York Southern District Court, Judge Alvin Hellerstein pushed back against efforts by U.S. prosecutors to restrict the ability of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and first combatant Cilia Flores to defend themselves. The case follows their capture during a U.S. military operation in Caracas, an action widely condemned as an illegal and flagrant violation of international law. Inside the courtroom, prosecutors repeatedly invoked vague claims of national security and foreign policy to justify limiting the defendant's rights, but struggled to provide concrete evidence. The judge emphasized the importance of due process, challenging attempts to block Venezuela from funding the legal defense and questioning measures that would withhold key case information. Defense lawyers warned that such restrictions could make a fair trial impossible, arguing that if Maduro and Flores are denied the means to defend themselves, the case itself could collapse. Outside the courthouse, protesters rallied in solidarity and denouncing what they see as politically motivated persecution. The demonstration reflected a broad international concern over the treatment of the two figures who are being held in prolonged solitary confinement and under inhumane conditions. The case has also reignited debate over the broader political context surrounding Venezuela. Supporters argue that the charges against Maduro and Flores are part of a long-standing campaign to destabilize the country and assert control over its resources, and to weaken Cuba. They point to inconsistencies in the official narrative and highlight the lack of evidence behind some of the most widely circulated claims. At the same time, the courtroom battle has highlighted hypocrisy within U.S. policy itself. The judge noted that sanctions on Venezuela have already been partially lifted to allow oil transactions, undermining arguments that Venezuelan funds are inherently illegitimate. For many observers, the issue is not just the fate of the two individuals, but the principle at stake. The proceedings have underscored that the right to defend themselves is paramount, a position that resonates far beyond the courtroom. As solidarity actions continue, the case is becoming a focal point for wider struggles over international law, national sovereignty, and resistance to imperial power. In Boise, Idaho, creative resistance is turning state-level attempts to erase LGBTQ visibility into a story of defiance and civic solidarity. After a series of escalating restrictions from the Idaho legislature aimed at banning pride flags from government buildings and public property, the city of Boise has responded with inventive workarounds. The latest move came after Mayor Lauren McLean was forced to remove the pride flag from City Hall on March 31st, coinciding with the Trans Day of Visibility. The flag had flown over the building for more than a decade. Rather than retreating, city officials adapted. With new laws restricting flag displays on public property, Boise transformed the idea of the flag itself, installing rainbow-wrapped flag poles and permanent pride-themed public art installations outside City Hall. The response is part of a wider pattern of local resistance emerging across the United States. In several states, activists have responded to pride flag bans with alternative forms of public expression, from rainbow-painted crosswalks recreated in protest, to improvised light displays and community-led pride actions designed to bypass legal restrictions. One local passerby described the impact of the display, saying, "I feel loved, I feel accepted by the people that matter, I feel hope." On the Trans Day of Visibility, Canada's Labour Movement issued a collective statement of solidarity with trans and gender-diverse people, framing the movement as part of a broader struggle for workers' rights, equality, and social justice. Across the country, unions are reaffirming their commitment to defending trans rights as an inseparable part of the wider labour struggle. The Canadian Labour Congress emphasized that solidarity is not symbolic but foundational to working-class unity in the face of division. As CLC President B. Brusk stated, "Workers have always understood that an attack on one of us is an attack on all of us." She added that unions are standing against attempts by political actors to scapegoat vulnerable communities. Canada's unions are proud to be allied with the trans and gender-diverse communities bravely facing down attempts from conservative and alt-right politicians trying to distract from their economic mismanagement by scapegoating the most vulnerable among us. Alongside public advocacy, unions report ongoing efforts to secure concrete protections through collective bargaining, including workplace policies that support gender-affirming healthcare, transition support, and anti-discrimination protections. The labor movement also highlights its coordination with broader civil society and LGBTQ+ organizations, positioning this work as part of a global push for inclusion and gender justice. A major renewable energy milestone has been reached in Laos, where a 1,000 megawatt photovoltaic project has been successfully connected to the grid and has begun full operation. The development announced by China General Nuclear Power Group is being framed as part of a broader shift toward large-scale clean energy cooperation and infrastructure transformation in the region. The solar farm is expected to generate around 1.65 billion kilowatt-hours of electricity annually, while reducing carbon dioxide emissions by approximately 1.3 million tons each year. Beyond its climate impact, the project has also functioned as a significant engine of local development, creating nearly 3,000 jobs at peak construction and supporting surrounding communities through road repairs and the reinforcement of 5 bridges. The project also includes institutional development components. A Clean Energy Power Standards Research Institute has been established in Laos, alongside training programs that have prepared nearly 100 local engineers for work in the renewable energy sector. In a battle for the future of Oregon's waterways, Measure 20-373, the Lane County Watersheds Bill of Rights, is trying to legally recognize the rights of nature of the watershed. The measure will be on the ballot for the May 19th election in Western Oregon, but is being met with some very deep-pocketed opponents. A newly formed opposition group, Protect Our County, has already raked in nearly $189,000, much of it from logging, real estate, chemical, and mining interests, including the notorious Koch network, which has poured $25,000 into a PAC that funneled $85,000 into the anti-measure campaign. Calling it out as astroturfing, Chief Petitioner Kunu Bircham of the Northern Cheyenne Ho-Chunk Nation warns that powerful corporate interests are disguising themselves as everyday locals to kill the bill. With donors like Charles Koch, Western States Petroleum, and Oregon's largest timber and development firms lining up against it, the fight over Lane County's watersheds has become a flashpoint in the broader battle for environmental democracy. Outside forces and corporate eco-terrorists are pouring dark money into this election because they are scared, says Eron King, a Lane County resident and one of the organizers behind Protect Lane County Watersheds. They're scared that the people might actually gain some traction and stop their exploitation of nature. Protect Lane County Watersheds is requesting that supporters volunteer their time to help spread the word about Measure 20-373 by putting out yard signs supporting the measure, going door to door with literature, and sharing content online. They are providing a series of training sessions for advocates to plug in, details of which can be found on their website, which we will link in the show notes. If you have good news from the current month, please send your stories to mexi@protonmail.com. As mentioned, we have a special offer for viewers from MeansTV, which is a worker-owned cooperative dedicated to supporting and producing anti-capitalist media. The streaming service hosts us, along with other rad creators like Second Thought and Luna Oy, full-length documentaries like Abby Martin's Gaza Fights for Freedom, and Means original content like Means Morning News, Seriously Wrong's Papa and Boy, and much more. We're happy to announce that we are now able to offer viewers a discount on joining MeansTV. If you sign up using our link and code, which is MEXI, you'll get 20% off your first month, which comes to $7.99. Or you could go with the annual option and get 20% off the entire year. Signing up using our code not only directly contributes to the financial sustainability of the Means Cooperative Media Project, but is also a great way to support our channel. So if you have the means, consider taking us up on the discount. The link and code are in the description box below. Thank you to Javi for the Positive News Jams. Thank you to Cosmo for the Positive News background. Thank you to Catherine and me for scriptwriting, production, and hosting. And thank you to the Hazels for editing this video. If you'd like to support the show, please go to patreon.com/positiveleftistnews, or you can give us a one-time tip via PayPal. The link is in the description box below.